want to get our brine for our chicken ready. Now, brining, I think, is one of my favorite tricks in the kitchen. It really is one of those things that can take you from being a pretty good cook to an amazing cook, just because you know the tricks, right? So a brine is nothing but salt and actually at its most basic, it's salt and water, right? That's all you have to do to make a brine. So we're getting some water that's going to come up to a boil. Now, when you add the salt will actually open the cells in the muscle tissue of the meat that you're brining, and the salt can get into the cells. What it can also do is take some other flavors along with it for the ride. So take advantage of this opportunity to get some flavor all the way through whatever it is you're going to brine, right? So I've got a couple things I'm going to do. I almost always like to use garlic. And you don't have to worry too much about this stage, because if you need to, you can always strain the brine. Often I will, because I like to use things like whole peppercorns, and those are hard to get off sometimes when you go to put your finished meat on the grill, and nobody wants to bite into a whole peppercorn or a whole bay leaf. That's not very nice. All right, now, let me grab my salt. This is the kosher salt, and we're almost out, so I didn't use it for the beans. I saved it for this brine. You want, I would almost say a half a cup to a cup, depending on what volume. We're doing a lot of chicken, so I'm going to use probably a cup of the kosher salt. And when I say a lot of chicken, I mean a lot of chicken. And don't panic over this amount of salt, right? This is going to be cut by an awful lot of cold water in a little bit. So this is going to be very diluted by the time we get done with it. Don't worry about that amount of salt. If you happen to be cooking with people that like to take ingredients outside and don't really seal them up like they're supposed to, you may discover that your sugar has gotten rock hard. This is actually a good application for that. If you've gotten brown sugar that has gotten hard, it's going to dissolve in there, right? So it doesn't matter if you've got lumps and bumps. So instead of trying to soften it back up so you can use it, throw it in a brine. I also have a couple of chicken bouillon cubes. I don't normally use them. I don't buy them at my house, but they're here, and I'm going to take advantage of the flavor because I am borrowing some secrets from the barbecue pros, and that's one of them. And I hope I don't pull my camera down here in just a second. Wait a minute, I know it's here. I saw it a minute ago. There we go. So we've got some bouillon, we've got salt, we've got brown sugar, we have garlic. And now I'm adding a lot of black peppercorns. Absolutely adore this flavor. When you use it in a brine, what it does to poultry is incredible. So black peppercorns. And don't skimp on them. I mean, I've seen people that use like 4. Don't bother if that's all you're going to do. I had a handful, so I would say 2 tablespoons. My handful, 2 tablespoons. That is over very hot water. While we're waiting on this to come up to a boil, I want to show you a trick. So we've got our brown sugar that got taken outside to the grill, and it was cooked with last weekend, and then it proceeded to get rock hard because of the damp. Well, it's hard to use that way. I'm going to show you how to fix it. Yes, you can dissolve it and use it in a brine, but there's only so much brining you can do, and if you happen to want to do some baking, your sugar's messed up. Best solution ever. I showed this to my daughter. She was astounded. Take the heel of the bread, which nobody ever wants to eat anyway. I usually give my chickens, and tuck it down in there. Boom. Right? Okay. Let me show you this in a second, because that's pretty cool. We're going to rescue that brown sugar. Okay, our beans, can you see this? They're just starting to come up to a boil, and we want it to come to a full rolling boil. That sugar, or I mean the salt, will dissolve in there, and I'm going to give it a stir just to make sure that our salt is evenly distributed throughout. I'm going to set that aside. That is almost ready for us to put a lid on it and walk away and wait for an hour. This is almost to a boil. I'm going to put one last ingredient in there, because remember, This is gonna flavor our chicken from the inside out. So we're gonna have some amazing chicken. All right, that is just half of an onion. And it just sits, okay? So, now we are ready to cap this guy. Set a timer for an hour. We're simply waiting on this to come to a boil. And when this comes to a boil, we're going to throw it in this great big pot over here with a bunch of ice so that we'll actually have about 2 quarts of brine, okay? But we want it to come to a full boil, and we want it to boil hard for a couple of minutes because we want to release all the flavor from those peppercorns, the garlic, and the onion. All right, guys, now we're just at a waiting game. I think I need about 10 minutes. 10 minutes, how about that?
We'll be right back.
Okay, so our brine came up and it had a good hard boil for about, I gave it 3 or 4 minutes, okay? Now, we are gonna do a couple things in order, so stay with me. We may need to get another piece of tape over here, by the way. So the first thing we're gonna do is get our chicken and our brine together. Now, of course, when you're working with poultry, there is a safety factor. We don't wanna put hot brine on raw chicken. That's an invitation for some problems. That's not really the kind of thing you want to serve at your barbecue. You really don't want to do that to people. So, the way to work around that, while we tape our cameras back together, big container. A lot of ice cubes in the floor. Alright. Sorry about the noise. And I'm sorry about all this water I got on the floor. Here we go. Alright. So, what you're doing is you want enough ice in that hot brine to bring the temperature down to well below 40 degrees, okay? Now, a lot of your ice is going to melt. And I've seen a lot of brine recipes where people just say add cold water. I'm not really sure I understand the point of that when you can just add ice cubes and it's going to serve the same purpose. It's also going to make sure that your brine is well below the temperature where it needs to be. So give it a good stir. You're going to see a lot of your ice cubes start to melt. That's fine. And that is going to dilute your brine.
You could put it under the camera. So
Well, there's not a whole lot to, I can show you. Yeah.
Okay.
See? Not a whole lot to see at this point. But you know all that salt that we added, which seemed like a ton, this is how diluted it gets, okay? And this is also going to deal with an awful lot of chicken. Let me grab the chicken. All right. I'm working over here because I don't want to contaminate my cutting board. So once you've got your brine nice and cold, now this is still partly frozen, did you know that?
I probably should have taken it out of the bag.
That's all right. It's super cold, but it'll come loose. Daryl likes to work with gloves. They don't make any gloves small enough to fit me, so I'm gonna give my hands a quick rinse. I like that. I'm delegating already. All right, now once that's in there, we need a cold place to stash that. Don't you have another refrigerator out here?
It'll hold it easy.
Awesome. Will you mind taking that out and stick it in the refrigerator for me?
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna let that sit in the brine for several hours. I set a booby trap with all the ice cubes on the floor, just so you know that. We're gonna let that sit out there in the brine for several hours. You can do chicken up to overnight, but you have to kind of be careful because your brine can make your chicken too salty if you let it sit there for too long. That's not fun. Okay, now, all right, crash, crash. Okay, we're gonna let it sit for about an hour. We're gonna let it come closer to room temperature. Now I'm struggling. so that it will cook more evenly. That's a pretty good tip. Anytime you're cooking meat, bring it out. Okay, so for our chicken, we brined our chicken. We'll put a link to the brine. We did a quick brine with salt and brown sugar and garlic. I don't remember what else we put in there. Onion and some chicken bouillon. And we let that sit for quite a while. And then we brought it out of the brine to start letting that skin dry off a little bit. The drier the skin, the crispier it is. Now, I was watching the competition part about removing the skin and scraping the fat. I'm sorry, that's just more than I'm going to ever do with the house. I would be willing to do it for a competition, I really would. And I'm actually kind of glad to know the technique because I'm thinking of some other applications where that might be useful. But that's a lot of work, and I'm just not doing it. What I will do, though, is pat dry my chicken, and where those bits of skin have